right. Well, good evening, everybody. Well, here I'm in Washington, D.C., and here it is 6 p.m. And I'm just so happy to be with you tonight. I hope this is the beginning of a productive relationship with Miss Fisher. And is it the Bay Area Women's, what's the last word? You're on Zoom.
Myself. I have to unmute myself. Bay Area Women Coalition, Inc.
And is there a bay near you? Why is it called the Bay Area?
Because we're here in Mobile. It's the Bay.
You're on the Gulf, right?
We're right here in the water.
Okay.
I'm like 5 miles from jumping in the river.
Got you. Okay. Well, I'll find that out soon, right? When I come down to visit with you. So, but my name is Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick. I'm an infectious diseases doctor, and I trained in public health at the CDC in Atlanta. And throughout the pandemic, we have been conducting these sessions to allow community members who have questions about the pandemic, about COVID-19, testing, and most recently, the vaccine. I know there are a lot of questions about the vaccine. And so what we're trying to do is make ourselves available so that if, there are some people who absolutely don't want to take the vaccine, and that's their choice. But then there are some people who would take the vaccine, but they just need to have their questions answered so they can get comfortable. That's why we're here. So we'll be working with Ms. Fisher over the next few months to have sessions like this and to visit with you in Mobile to talk to people about what's happening during the pandemic and answer questions. So the most common questions I get from people are usually about safety and the speed of the vaccine production. How do we have a vaccine so fast? And I'll first start by saying I was in the vaccine trial research. So before the vaccines were even available to the general public, they went through a research process. It's the same process that's used for any medication. So if you're on a medication by your doctor, or you've taken medication over the counter from Walmart or CVS or, sorry, I'm downtown DC, and so you can hear all these sirens. Hopefully it's not too loud. What's your drugstore there, Ms. Fisher? Your main drugstore?
We have Walgreens, CVS, we have Walmart, and we have a lot of privately owned drugstores, but none of them are in our community.
Oh, really? So how far you have to drive to go to the drugstore?
We could either catch the bus or, what is it, 4 miles? I think it's 4 miles, maybe 5. The bus runs down my street, but it doesn't run down everybody's street. So I can just jump out in front of the bus and get on it.
Do any of your hospitals have pharmacies?
I think Franklin Clinic, which is privately owned, has a pharmacy. And let's see, does Providence? I'm not sure. That's a good question. I have to research that.
Well, that's okay. I was just curious.
But doesn't Justin work at Providence? Doesn't Justin work at Providence?
Yes.
Someone said Spring Hill.
He works at Mobile Infirmary.
But it looks like Spring Hill has a pharmacy.
Oh, Spring Hill. Yeah,
that's what I said.
But the only reason I'm raising this is to make the point that I know there's a lot of concern that it seems the vaccines were produced quickly, but the research process used to produce the vaccines, yes, it went faster, but it's the same process used for medications found in pharmacies or over the counter or prescribed by your doctor. The reason it went so much faster is because we're in a global pandemic and the government removed a lot of the red tape because, there are people employed in government and in academic institutions that I don't want to say they slow down the process, but their jobs are part of the machine, the engine of approving things. And so a lot of times if you submit a proposal to get a research study approved, it sits on someone's desk for a while, or maybe they have so many to review ahead of it. It takes a while. But in this case, because we were so desperate for a solution to the pandemic, all these proposals went to the front of the line so that we could produce a vaccine. And so people say the steps were skipped. They weren't skipped. It just went a lot faster because they removed some of these administrative barriers. The other thing that made it go faster is that they already knew a lot about coronavirus, because coronavirus causes the common cold. And usually if you are trying to develop a vaccine, you remember Zika? So Zika, we didn't really know much about Zika. So it took some time for them to try to learn about it and understand it. And you have to understand it before you can make a vaccine. So they tried to make a vaccine against Zika, but they weren't successful. And so that's an example of a vaccine that took a lot longer. But see, they already knew about coronavirus, so they could actually jump straight to creating a vaccine because they have been working on creating vaccines for a long time. And finally, it's hard to enroll enough people in a research trial because you need a certain number of people to make sure it works. And so again, we're in a global pandemic. So a lot of people volunteered to be in the trials, and sometimes it can take a year or more to get enough people, and they had enough people in a matter of, weeks or months. So all these things together led us to having a vaccine very quickly. Is it safe? The first part of any research study, whether it's those medicines in the Spring Hill Pharmacy or in Walgreens, they go through this process. The first phase is to test for safety. They're looking to see, is anybody maimed by it, or are they having a severe side effect they can't recover from? Does anybody die? And they prove that already in the first phase of the research. So that's how I felt comfortable being in the research study. So the side effects we're seeing now from these vaccines, the achiness, fevers, just general tiredness, all of these things were identified in the research. So why don't I stop there and listen to your questions? Who's got a question? Just unmute yourself and ask your question.
If I could ask a question about the likelihood of breakthrough infections for those who are vaccinated past the 7-month time frame.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so if I know it's frustrating to see how much information we don't know about these vaccines. The immune status is different for everyone. And so when I say immune status, I mean, is your body responding to the vaccine? Or if you've had COVID, is your body creating an immune response, preparing you to keep you from getting COVID again? And so for some people, this protection lasts for a short amount of time. And for some people, it lasts a year or more. And the problem is, everybody is different. So there's no way to know the answer to your question. Is that Mr. Stallworth? Is that your name?
Yes.
Yeah, so the question of booster shots, this is very controversial. In fact, tomorrow, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, is going to give their opinion about who needs boosters, what we do about boosters. If people got vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and they didn't have a great response, meaning they didn't have enough protection, and the vaccine didn't work well for them, a booster probably is not going to help them that much. On the other hand, if you got a lot of protection from the vaccine, maybe you still have enough protection and you don't need a booster. Or there are some people, their protection is dropping and they can benefit from a booster. The challenge is we don't know who goes in which category. And I know this is it's even frustrating for me because, you know, there's a lot of speculation about the boosters, and do you need boosters and who needs a booster? So we unfortunately don't have the answer to that, and we can't have the answer because we don't have a process for testing every single person to figure out how well their body responded to the vaccine and how long their protection lasts. But it's really an excellent question that we don't have the answer to. I think you know, who's getting breakthrough infections. So people who've been fully vaccinated, had either the J&J shot or the 2-shot vaccine. Some of the breakthrough infections are happening, but it seems like most of them are happening in older people and people who have weaker immune systems. Did I get all your questions, Mr. Stallworth?
Yeah.
Okay, you can always come back.
Okay.
Who's next? Okay, I'll just wait a minute and see if you have any questions.
If anybody else don't have a question, I ask another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I got my second dose of the vaccine in February, the first day of February, February 1st. In the hospital that I work, they said those who work in the COVID unit would be eligible to take the booster if they wanted. Now, with that being said, with me being someone who works in the COVID unit and the emergency room, would it be a good idea to take the booster knowing that the efficacy of the vaccine could wane after 8 months? Because a lot of my coworkers are asking that same question. I kind of went ahead and just did it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you already got your booster? No, you just
I already got my booster.
You did? How'd you get that booster?
They said if you worked in the COVID unit, you can get it.
Oh, is that right? Okay. All right. So I think there's no right or wrong answer right here, because there's a debate in our country right now about whether or not boosters should be available for everybody, particularly people who are less likely to get severe COVID or be hospitalized. And that's because if you look at how many people are vaccinated outside of the United States, like Africa, the Caribbean, parts of Asia, it's so low. It's like 1 or 2%. And if there's a limited number of vaccines available for people, should Americans who've already been fully vaccinated get access to yet another shot when so many people haven't gotten one shot? So I think this is part of the challenge around who gets boosters. But whether or not people who are working in the COVID unit should get a booster, I think that is a decision you have to make. If it's offered to you and you've been vaccinated many months ago, I think we know it will add some additional protection, but the question on my mind is, did you really need it in the first place? And that's the question we don't know the answer to. But it sounds like you're fully protected. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I went ahead and got it, because I have a young child. And me working on the COVID unit, I don't want to contract it. Even though I always wear my PPE, but still, it's always good to have that extra layer of protection.
Yeah, well, let me just talk a minute about transmission in people who are fully vaccinated. So, people have been asking this question from the beginning: will vaccination protect you from transmitting it to someone else? But you have to think about what vaccines are doing in your body. So, as my friend said, she says the purpose of a vaccine is not to automatically deflect coronavirus, to have it bounce off of you if you come in contact with it. What's actually happening is if you inhale coronavirus through your nose or through your mouth, or some people say you get it through your eyes. I think that is exceedingly rare. Most people get it because they've inhaled it. Coronavirus can be in your nose because it takes a while for your body to recognize something is going on. So, think of it like you set the alarm when you go to bed at night, and if somebody breaks into your house, you don't immediately keep the person out just because you have an alarm, but it triggers a response. And then that's what helps catch the burglar. So think about it like that when it comes to whether or not a person who's vaccinated can transmit. So if I have COVID-19 and I'm standing next to you, Mr. Stallworth, in a grocery line, you're fully vaccinated, I sneeze, you inhale coronavirus. It can still be in your airway. Maybe you can sneeze and give it to someone else, but it's so unlikely that you'll give it to lots of people, because your body, once it recognizes coronavirus, it's going to go to work tamping it down, getting rid of it so you can't spread it to someone else. But that doesn't mean you can't go, 2 more feet and encounter someone, inhale coronavirus and have it be in your airway. So that's the tricky part about vaccination and transmission. It's much less likely because you don't have a lot of virus floating around, but it's not impossible.
I have a question.
Go.
What is a bad candidate for the vaccine? Like, they shouldn't get it at all.
Yeah. Well, so I think part of the frustration for the public is that when we answer questions like this, we just kind of parrot what the usual answers are. And so the usual answer is someone who's allergic to the vaccine. But these are new vaccines, so we don't know who's allergic. The worst possible reaction to the vaccine, though, because we know the vaccines were safe, as I mentioned, from the research study, they wouldn't actually have moved to the next phase if they saw people were dying from the vaccine or they were having severe debilitating side effects. So if someone gets vaccinated, the worst reaction is someone can have what's called anaphylaxis, or that's a severe allergic reaction. Their airway starts to close up and they have other symptoms. But the good news about that is if you are severely allergic to something in that way, the reaction is identifiable immediately, like within minutes. And that's the reason after you get vaccinated, you have to sit and wait, because we're waiting to make sure you don't have that kind of reaction. That's why these vaccines are administered by healthcare personnel who are trained to deal with severe allergic reactions like that. So other than that, we've seen how devastating COVID is to people who have weak immune systems, who have chronic healthcare conditions like lupus and HIV and diabetes. So the risk of getting the vaccine is much, much less than having a health condition like that and getting COVID, because we've seen what happens. They end up in the hospital, the ICU, and some even die.
Okay, Doc?
Yes, ma'am.
We have a question.
We have
a question in the chat.
Some of these people don't want to talk, but they sent a question to me.
Okay, good.
What if you have diabetes type 1 I think, I don't know which type she got.
Okay,
Type 1 or type 2. And they took the Moderna.
They're scared to take the shot.
They're afraid to take the shot because something with
They're afraid. something will happen.
Pfizer or Moderna or something, they were saying. The doctor said if you got this or whatever, I don't know.
yeah. No, so these,
She has a
the,
heart problem too. She got a bad heart and she has type 1 or type 2 diabetes. She didn't tell me which one.
that's fine. And actually, the people who seem to have the worst trouble when they get COVID-19 are people with diabetes and heart disease. So I would encourage anybody who has heart disease and diabetes and either or to get vaccinated, because the people, if you look at all the thousands of people who ended up in the ICU or died from COVID-19, a large number of them had diabetes or heart disease. And early in the pandemic, that was one thing they noticed when they were looking at, okay, who's getting so sick from this virus? It was people with heart disease and people with diabetes. So the risk of having trouble with COVID-19, meaning going to the hospital, being put in the ICU, getting put on a ventilator, that risk is much higher than anything you have to worry about from the vaccine. There's a question in the chat. I was trying to let's see. I have encountered several people that said they won't take it because they know someone who died from it. And some of these are healthcare workers. The problem with this perception that the vaccine is killing people is that there's no way to prove it. And so a lot of these reports of death have been placed on the website. It's called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Registry. So I wanted to see how easy it is to put something on there. So I entered a complaint. Well, it's not really a complaint, but my side effects from the vaccine. Nobody asked me questions about it. No one has called me to verify. So this is a website. Anybody can go on there and put something in. And so of the thousands of people you'll find on this website that said someone died from the vaccine, it hasn't been verified and it hasn't been proven. But what happens, this information gets put on social media. And so people believe that folks are dying from the vaccine. It's possible that people may die in close proximity to the time they got the vaccine. But again, there's no way for us to prove that. But one thing I know is that, especially in the Black community, because we have a lot of diabetes and high blood pressure and overweight people, we are dying at higher rates than other people because we're not in a position to always have access to the healthiest food or the safest neighborhoods or even access to doctors or ways to stay healthy. And so we have to look out for ourselves in this way. And so saying that people are dying from the vaccine, the risk of death from COVID for people in our community is way higher, but I don't believe people are dying from the vaccine. What could happen is if you're someone who has some sort of health condition and you're very sensitive to having things swell, so inflammation, which is when things swell up in your body, because this can be a reaction to the vaccine. In fact, I had bad side effects. I had lots of pain and I had a fever. This is because the vaccine is working. The body is preparing to protect you. And so that comes along with some inflammation. So in some people, maybe their system gets overwhelmed and triggers other responses that could potentially lead to a bad outcome. There was a doctor who had a blood condition. And even before he got vaccinated, he had this blood condition, and his response to the vaccine made the blood condition worse. And then a few days later, he died. So you could potentially say it was from the vaccine, but he also had a lot of other things going on at the same time. So again, let's just say the vaccine does lead to death in some people. It is far, far less than the number of people who will die if they're unprotected from COVID-19. So, you know, this is a risk I think we all have to think about. What risk we're willing to take. I've also had people tell, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you so much for answering that question. I'm sorry I had to type it in the chat, but I was getting off of one Zoom and then I got another Zoom coming up. But I've been encountering so many people with that concern about others dying. And of course, we've been advising them that, you know, you don't know the whole story. You know, you don't know what happened. You don't know if this person had underlying health issues, which would have caused death after taking the vaccine. But I mean, I find it very alarming that so many people are willing to just not take it because of this fear.
Yeah, and some of that fear we won't be able to overcome, but you know, our purpose is to just provide the information we know and understand and hope that helps people feel more comfortable about their decision. I don't want anyone to not get vaccinated because they believe false information about the vaccine. Like we're hearing a lot about vaccines causing infertility. There have been thousands and thousands of people who've had babies, got pregnant, even during the research. There were people who got vaccinated and then later got pregnant, and then they got disqualified from the study because you're not supposed to be pregnant in the research study. But those women did fine. They looked at this and they've all gone on to deliver their babies, and there's nothing wrong with their babies. Mm-hmm. And so this notion that this vaccine will make you infertile, there's no proof of that. And people say, well, what if, you know, you find out like 3 or 5 years from now that you are infertile? How would you prove that's from the vaccine anyway? And why are we holding these vaccines to a different standard than any medicine that gets approved by the FDA? We don't ask for 5 years. What's going to happen if I take this diabetes medicine 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. They're taking the diabetes medicine because it's approved by the FDA. It's gone through research and it can save their life. But some vaccines are different.
I have a question, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is basically with the healthcare workers. I've encountered at my church trying to encourage people to take vaccinations. Healthcare workers are so negative about the vaccine. And of course, being in that field, people listen to them.
Yeah.
And they aren't necessarily, I don't think they're qualified to give the correct answers, but they are deterring people from actually taking the vaccine because of some of the, and I think they're really getting their information from social media themselves. Mm-hmm. But it's a problem. How do I encounter, or how do I handle situations when I encounter that type of problem to deter? I hate to discredit the persons, but what do I do? So what should I do?
I think if you have a better understanding of the science and how the research happened and how we arrived at the conclusion that these vaccines are safe, if you understand that better than they do, then I hope you would speak out and help them understand that. But I think there are some people who are not fond of vaccines and they just won't do it. I think it is unfortunate that healthcare workers are telling people not to get vaccinated rather than trying to talk to them about pros and cons. But it could be that they don't know. And the other thing I remind folks is that healthcare workers are just like everybody else. Many of us are prone to the same misinformation as other people, especially if we don't understand the science, we don't understand how research is conducted. Just because you're a healthcare worker doesn't mean you understand research or what goes on in the lab or how you make the determination that a vaccine is safe. And so I think we have to do a better job educating our health, especially our frontline healthcare staff who may not have been on that side of science and medicine. Because, you know, people who maybe go to nursing school or maybe they study to be a medical technician, their job is very different than someone who understands research and has conducted research or worked in the lab. And so I think there's a lack of understanding, because in medicine, we have a lot of silos or stovepipes, right? So we don't talk across the health system to understand what every person is doing and what their job is and how it intersects. So I would share with them what you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, are vaccines currently made with aborted fetal cells? This is a very common question I get also, because, and this is related to the point I was just making about within the healthcare system, people don't always understand what other folks are doing or the process. And so this notion that there are aborted fetal cells in the vaccine, first of all, that's not true. But the reason, because a lot of times misinformation is rooted in something that's true, and then it becomes misunderstood, or when it's communicated, you know, my organization is called Grapevine Health because we transmit health information by word of mouth. So it's like the game of telephone. You tell one person something, and by the time the 20th person hears it, it's completely different than what it started out as, right? So that's what's happened with this aborted fetal cells. So in order to do science in the lab, to understand how the body works, how to make medications and treatments, how to understand what's gone wrong with the body. So for instance, if someone has cancer and the lab is trying to find a cure for cancer, they have to understand how the cells in the body work. And so in that learning process, you get cells from lots of different places. And because aborted fetuses, they have human tissue as well, human cells, you can take that, look at it underneath a microscope and see what you can learn in the lab. And so when you're learning what happens, you have to take that information and then use it to create whatever the treatment is. And so in this case, creating the vaccine is so many different, it's actually first unrelated to looking at those fetal cells underneath a microscope or working on them in the lab. But it's also so many steps removed from that process. Because by the time you get to working with a vaccine, there are no cells involved. So those cells will actually not be in the vaccine. The vaccine is whatever the mechanism is to teach your body how to respond to the germ, like COVID-19 or coronavirus. And then it has to be packaged in something so it can be delivered in a vaccine. So that's all the vaccine is. If it's Pfizer and Moderna, it is messenger RNA, and the whole purpose of messenger RNA, which is in our bodies right now doing all sorts of things. That messenger RNA, it's not DNA, it's something very different, and it doesn't interact with your DNA. Its job is to give instructions. So this is actually a sort of a modern miracle that they could even figure out how to do this. But people are so skeptical about what's going on. If it weren't a pandemic, we would be praising the scientists for coming up with this. But the messenger RNA is giving the body instructions to make the spike protein on the coronavirus to protect you if you come in contact with it. So it's sort of complicated, but it doesn't have anything to do with fetal cells. And so to deliver that messenger RNA, they have to encase it in a tiny little fat droplet so that it has some substance to it, so you could actually deliver it to a person. So when you look and see all those ingredients, because all the ingredients are listed on the FDA and the CDC website, you can see what they are. And most of those ingredients are preservatives. And if you pick up, some food in your cupboard right now, you'll see some of those same names on the food packages as you see on this vaccine, because they are helping to preserve it so it can be stable enough to give to somebody or sit in the freezer until you put it in somebody's arm. Does that help, or is that too confusing? Somebody tell me.
It's a lot.
It
The layperson may not understand it.
Which part?
Layperson.
Okay, someone gave me a thumbs up, but which part do you think is too confusing? Because this is part of why we do this. We want people to, let's have a dialogue until we get it clear.
Well, why would, is that one of the reason you start talking about the above fetus cell? Is that a reason, or has that come up? Because I hadn't heard that.
It comes up a lot, people, because they're in the beginning of the pandemic, there was misinformation circulating on Facebook that the vaccine contained aborted fetal cells.
Okay, that hadn't been a problem with me in my conversation with people. That has not, but it's good information in case I run across somebody that says that.
But someone asked that in the chat. That's the reason I answered.
Oh, okay. It must have been to you personally, because I don't.
Oh,
wait a minute,
maybe.
I need to pull it up.
Maybe.
I don't see
which
it.
vaccine would I suggest? I think any of them, even though there's some perception that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a lot worse. It's actually not. People get a lot of protection from Johnson & Johnson vaccines. And so even with Delta, the vaccines still have some protection. Well, how can that be? It's because it's still coronavirus, and all Delta is a mutation on that SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus that started the pandemic. When vaccines copy themselves, they make mistakes.
Man, this one just showing.
And that's all a mutation is. It's a mistake when the virus copies itself. And so it's still coronavirus. And that's why the vaccines still have some protection against Delta.
I got a question.
Okay, just one before that. Someone asked if masks work. Yes, they do. There are plenty of studies that show that if someone has coronavirus, if they have the infection, they are less likely to spew the germs to somebody else. So, and before we had vaccines, all we had was social distancing and masks and hand washing. We still need to be doing those things when it's appropriate.
That's the question.
So go ahead. Is that Laria?
Laria,
hi.
Okay, Dr. Lisa. I got a lot of people on, but I haven't heard them ask the question, and I don't know the phone number, so they need. This is Savannah Fisher speaking to everybody who's online. You need to go on and ask your question.
Well, Laria has
asking in the chat.
The ones who all you're showing is a telephone number. I don't know who I'm talking to.
But let's let Laria ask her question. Or Laria, I'm sorry. Laria, okay.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. My question is, like with the flu shot, you get it once a year. You have to get it every year. How long is this virus shot that they're taking last in your body? 5 years?
We don't know.
Years?
Yeah, we don't know that yet, which is why they're talking about boosters for some people, because we know that for some people, the the protection, it doesn't last as long. Some people it lasts a short time, some people it lasts a long time, but it's, we don't know yet if we're gonna have to have this every year. And so I think we just unfortunately have to wait in this confusing state to figure out how long coronavirus is going to stick around. Some people say, oh, it's just going to be here. We have to live with it. But I'm in the camp that says this coronavirus has surprised us and shocked us too many times. So I'm in the wait and see mode.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Fisher, you have other questions?
I've tried to put it in there because somebody asked me, does taking vitamins such as D, C, and echinacea and all these liquids they have on the market, they were saying that keeps them from getting the virus. And they sanitize their rooms every time somebody walk in or walk out. I think they have some kind of sanitizing equipment they bought from Walmart or wherever. They want to know, does this stuff help or work against the virus?
Yes, it's actually, so the vaccine or vitamins, so I don't want to say vitamins are the treatment. Sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. So if you're healthy when you come in contact with coronavirus, you are less likely to be hospitalized. That's true. Like we can see that. And there have been occasional really healthy people. Like someone told me he treated a marathon runner who was really healthy and he ended up in the ICU. So that can happen. But when you look at most of the cases of people who go to the hospital, it's people who have these other health conditions. And so I think we do know that vitamin D is good for your immune status, but it has to be before you get sick. So if you get sick with coronavirus right now, taking all these vitamins and, vitamin D and all this echinacea and those sorts of things, it's not a treatment for COVID-19. Who knows, it might help some, but it's a little too late. So the idea is to practice all this prevention before you actually get sick.
What was the other question? J-Lo Walker wanted to say.
I have a question.
Yep.
My doctor gave me the vitamin D last year when it was, everybody was just learning about it and everything. So she did, but she gave it to me a prescription and I take it once a week. I've been taking it once a week ever since last year. I just take it and I made my date to take it every Tuesday. But is the vitamin D good for fighting off for building your immune system?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And vitamin D is often necessary for a lot of us because we don't get a lot of it in our diet, and we don't, we're not out in the sun, because really to get your vitamin D levels up, you have to, get some vitamins in your food, and then you have to be out in the sun so that it actually gets converted to the vitamin D you need to help with your bones and your immune status. So yes, it is. And I would encourage people, to take a walk or be outside in the sun as much as you can. Certainly not all day, but at least get some exposure to the sun, like on your arms and legs and your, head and neck, so that you can get the vitamin D levels up. Because a lot of Black people have low vitamin D levels, but it's not that we can't do anything about it. It's just that we need to be exposed to the sun a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay,
I just wanted to make excuse me. Is a gal she can go forward if she want to go.
Yes. She ready? I have a question. My question is, I actually had the virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to urgent care, and they asked me did I have the shot yet. I said no. They said I have to wait 90 days now before I can even get the shot. Is that true?
So I think it is a good idea to wait, but if you've just had coronavirus, your body has protection for you. And there's a lot of people are upset because they feel like we're pushing the vaccines and people who have had COVID, because getting COVID is a way to have protection. But their research showed that even people who got COVID, when they got one shot after having COVID, it boosted the response so that you had even more protection. So I think waiting 90 days is a good idea. Or you could probably wait, less, a couple months. But the point is, you don't have to be in a rush to run out and get a vaccine if you just had COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Make a comment, because I'm a pastor of the church and I've been encouraging the people in my church to take the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to get this scripture out to some of y'all if y'all run into some of these religious people.
We're listening.
2:7. The scripture is Mark 2:17 to kind of help curtail some of these religious people that really don't know the Bible. And Jesus said he never denounced a doctor. He said they that are whole have no need of a physician, but they that are sick. So if Jesus never denounced a physician, I want some of these religious people to stop denouncing, stop taking the shot and doing it. I can have both of my shots, and I'm pushing it because I believe that everything comes from God, and there's no way in the world a scientist or nobody could have discovered the vaccine or found out about it unless God put it here. So God did it. So I just want to throw that out to kind of curtail some of the people that's going to run into some of these religious fanatics that want to try to act like you got to have faith. Your faith, and you better believe it, should be in Jesus Christ for uh, uh, for salvation. That's what it's for after you die, basically. If you don't believe in Christ Jesus, the main thing is to go to heaven. But right now, I do believe we need to take care of our body. But that scripture, for anybody who wants to look it up again, is Mark 2:17. And Jesus said that if you're sick, you need a doctor. I just want to put that out.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir. Someone asked me about this Dr. Malone, who he's the creator of messenger RNA. So the mechanism for Moderna and Pfizer, why is he talking bad about it? I don't know a lot about this, but from what I've read, I think it might be partially a case of jealousy, because he I think did some work on it long before it was popular or we knew much about it. And now the people who've been working on it consistently for years, like this lady, Dr. Katie, she's been working on messenger RNA for 30 years. And so now that it's worked in a vaccine, she's getting a lot of credit for that. And he claims he worked on it before she did. But he also thinks, I think he also disagrees with the pace of the research and some other things, but I don't think he believes it's not possible, or that it's not good, or that it doesn't work. I also think a lot of people, they use the media to get a platform because people will listen to them. And so when they say things that are unpopular or contrary to what everybody else is saying, then someone sticks a microphone in their mouth. So I don't really know much more about it than that. So any follow-up questions about that? Whoever asked that question about Dr. Malone? Okay. Any more questions, Ms. Fisher?
I have one more I want to ask. I get a lot of information. I mean, I get a lot of concerns about Johnson and Johnson
Yes.
because of the suits that were previous suits, lawsuits about the baby powder, and that they really don't trust that company. But I do say there are two more you can trust: Pfizer, which it does, and Moderna, which really has a lot of experience in medication for years. But the Johnson and Johnson really is getting a bad rap when it comes to the vaccinations. How can we answer that? Do we answer that with the same, or just tell them to go with who they feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I would just remind people that all these vaccines went through the research process. And more than any other medication, these vaccines have been scrutinized. Like, people are watching because the world is watching to see what's happening with the process in these vaccines. Also, Johnson & Johnson is now owned by Janssen, I think. And so, you know, the issue with the baby powder and the, you know, women with cancer, some of those things are hard to prove, but the problem is when there's bad press, like, people remember that. And so even if they tried to come out with a retraction or to justify or explain what happened, it's really too late, because that already is like stuck in people's minds, that association, whether it's true or not. And so I think that's unfortunate for them, because the vaccine is a good vaccine and it's convenient. In fact, people would always ask me, if you had a choice, which one would you get? And I always, even today, would say Johnson & Johnson. You know why? Because it's one shot.
Sure.
Very convenient. I don't like having to go back for a second shot.
Got a question about that Johnson & Johnson. Is it possible to get that booster shot after you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccination?
Some people have done that. I think there haven't been any specific studies with thousands of people to look at that, but I think that those people who have gotten, you know, one shot of the Moderna or the Pfizer after J&J as a booster, they've been okay. But we're, you know, they're kind of slow to come out with research about whether or not people with J&J actually need a booster, because J&J was produced later, when the Delta variant and some of these, not so much the Delta variant, but some of the variants were circulating. And so that shot was actually produced in response to some of the changes in the virus, whereas the Moderna and Pfizer, those were early before we even had any variants. 15. So they still have some protection.
Okay. Thank everybody for the questions. I know 5 people got on in at the end.
397.
A 397 number and a 465 number and a 302 and a 308. I haven't heard your questions yet. I know you all, I forgot to give you the passcode and all that kind of stuff. So now,
Ms. Fisher, we can talk again, you know, in the next week or so. And if it's not me, I'll have another doctor who can be on to answer people's questions. But what we would like to know from you and this audience, are there people on this call who have not been vaccinated? Do we know that? I'm not asking anybody's name. I just want to know, because what I don't want to do is to have this conversation over and over again with people who already have been vaccinated and they know what they, you know, they don't have questions really. So someone did say yes.
You have 15 of them that's on the phone that have not had their vaccine.
Oh, wow.
Okay, well, one thing I would like to know is if any of this discussion has helped move you along or change your mind or provided some clarity. And you can just give that feedback to Ms. Fisher. And if there are other things you still want to know, this is the beginning of our relationship. So it's not like I'm going away. I'm actually coming to Mobile. And if we want to meet in person, we can continue talking.
Dr. Fitzpatrick, I'm in Atlanta. Is this something you would do for us?
Yep, happy to. So let me put my email in the chat.
Okay.
And then you can just contact us and we'll figure out a way to work with you all too.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
This has been very informative.
Okay, well, I have to go now, but thank you so much, Ms. Fisher, for organizing this, and thank you for all the work to put the signs out. Did you all see the signs she put out?
Yes.
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
great, yeah. Okay, well, I look forward to the next time and to meeting some of you in person when I come to Mobile.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa.
All right, y'all have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
You
Bye.
too.